All right, guys, made it. Another unproductive day at work. Um, I got absolutely nothing done today. Yesterday, I spent most of the day researching monitors for Mark. Today, I spent most of my afternoon researching speakers, to which both Caleb and our boy Brian over there was trashing my choice of $150 speakers. What do you think about that, Mark?
They're both the worst, really, because I mean, I love me some Klipsch. Don't you like Klipsch?
I mean, Caleb, what was your argument that who the fuck cares about
Yeah,
speakers?
that's not something I'm going to spend money on is speakers. You know, I mean, I don't need them. I have a headset on 90% of the time. I don't need fancy computer speakers.
Yeah, I've had the same uh computer speakers that my brother bought me for Christmas, like when I was 18. So these guys be like 15. We'll see. Enough
It's the
about
thing
the
that many
useless stuff that we spent time doing at work, other than handicapping, which I know I'm sure Mark and Caleb did plenty of. We are on the wrong lead team. Sans the Wolf once again today due to recovering back surgery. So hopefully we'll be able to get him on Thursday or Friday, depending on how his back's holding up. Once again, I am Josh Cherry Drink in the Discord. On our far left, as usual, we have Mark the Wild Man over there, aka Pack Rat, aka the Beekeeper, aka Papa Honey, aka Japanese Whiskey Don't Care, aka I Love Korean Horses. What do you got there? Is that Japanese?
but dude, it's a bottle of honey.
Oh, a bottle of
It's
honey.
a
Okay, I didn't see what
one
that
pound bottle of
was.
honey. You know.
In the middle, we have the reigning champ, Caleb there, and then like I said, we're without the wolf, and hopefully a speedy recovery for him. So Mark, what are you drinking today?
Drinking a little bit of a little Bullet Rye.
Caleb, you still on that local stuff, or you got something?
Nah, I'm still on that bottle of Glenmorangie 10-year I had last night.
Oh, that's right.
I'm on a Scotch kick.
Yeah,
You can tell what somebody spent their winnings from the tournament on.
Well, Glenmorangie only like $39, so that's
it's a bargain bottle.
Yeah, I got a little Knob Creek Old Fashioned going here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're going to take a look at these first 5 Breeders' Cup races, starting with race 4 on Saturday, the Filly Mare Sprint here. Jack, why don't you take this one first here?
Yeah, I think this race really comes down to what are your feelings on Covfefe? I think this race begins and ends at Covfefe, goes through Covfefe, however you want to say it. She's really the horse here that's put up the best figs. She's 5-7 this year, just been an absolute monster. And if you're somebody playing a smaller ticket, I think she's a horse you have to really think about singling to. I like her quite a lot in the spot. She's shown, that she can both be on the lead or rate off from some speed. As she did when her and Midnight Beast, her and Serengeti Empress went absolutely nuts in the test on the front end. I think she doesn't need the lead. She's a horse that's super versatile. I think the real big thing here is just her being drawn inside with a bunch of speed outside of her. How bad does that scare you? Densuka's My Girl is immediately outside. I would assume they have to go. And how do you feel about that? I think if Rosario's smart, he lets Densuka's go to the front end, sits a trip, just off Densuka's, and takes over the top of the stretch, and and adds another one to the win column here. Now, if you're a little contrarian, I think there's a lot of other places you can go in here, but I'll let Caleb go there.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with it. The race, regardless of what you think of her, the race goes through Covfefe. If you are playing small, I think she's a reasonable single. And when I went through this race, I ended up on the 2 logical horses, which were both Covfefe and Come Dancing. Kovefe, if she runs her race, is the winner of this race. Unless Come Dancing or someone just absolutely freaks. Kovefe's best race is better than what most of these fillies and mares are capable of running, or what they've shown they're capable of running. And Kovefe's ran a number like that twice now. I think that looks even better when you look at her last race in the Dogwood, where she was pretty much geared down. And the horse she beat by 8 lengths, Bell's the One, came back to win the Ravens run at Keeneland like 2 weeks ago. At a nice price, too. So I think Kovefe is a logical use. The knocks against her, to play the contrarian, is that her only, bad race, not counting the one time that she routed going a mile, was when she had an inside draw and took pace pressure from Mia Mischief along the rail back in the Roxelana. I can't remember what that race was. Back in Churchill, basically, a couple, 3 starts back. She went off, first time facing older, and made the lead, took some pace pressure, and was just unable to, hold off Mia Mischief. Now, Mia Mischief's no slouch, but the inside draw part is what concerns me more, because once again, she has the rail here, and there is a lot of other speed. Danuska's my girl, didn't fire last time out, but typically is going to make the lead. The 3, Heaven Has My Nikki, is going to try to be somewhere towards the front. And Selcourt, I think, is a huge threat on the front end, not necessarily to win, but to play a role in the pace scenario. In light of all that, is the reason I'm really using Come Dancing, is that I think that she drew a lot better and has a better run style, a bit more versatility than what Kovefe has really shown so far. And that she can sit, a couple lengths off the pace and then make that run. She's really done nothing wrong as a 5-year-old. Her only loss came to Midnight Bisou, going a distance that's a lot farther than she really wants to go. I have some concerns about the way she's just looked visually in her last couple starts. She's been breaking slow, stumbling out of the gate, has not been breaking sharply, and has really been lugging in the stretch a little bit lately once she does get clear. Maybe that's just the fact that she hasn't really been challenged, or hasn't had to actually look a horse in the eye in the stretch, because she was already 3 lengths ahead. But that's the other horse, I think, that is going to sit probably a better trip than Kovefe, and does have enough natural talent and ability to run with a group like this and actually get the win. It'll remain to be seen if she can get a win outside of New York, because she really hasn't shipped too often, or really out of New York at all, to my understanding. But those are the 2 that I ended up on A's, with a couple other horses I might play as potentially B's or C's underneath. But I'll let Josh jump into that.
Yeah, you guys know how much I hate playing chalk. However, this one was kind of hard to kind of see past both Kovefe and Come Dancing. Let me button over BP that I got up. And yeah, I kind of had these 2 horses put down as my lone A's here. Reason being, is it's always tough with some of these horses that have shown early speed, who've also shown the ability to continue and keep that speed going, and have real good late pace figures, especially over the rest of the field. And if you look at some of these late pace figures here, we got these 200s on average for Kovefe and Come Dancing. No one else is in triple digits on average. If I were to use any kind of B's here, and like I said, this would be much of a stretch, because our only chance for either Kovefe and Come Dancing to not win this is going to be just a complete pace meltdown, which we know at a sprint distance is very, very rare. And the only 2 horses that I would want to pick up the pieces are going to be the 9 Spice Perfection or the 8 Dawn the Destroyer. They're the only 2 horses that have shown any kind of ability to make up a ton of ground on the back end, or at least come up with a nice big late pace figures. So this might be, on my skinnier ticket, which is probably all I'm going to play, I'm probably just going to go with the 1 and the 4 and just be done with it. If I were to play a little deeper, this would probably be an AC situation, where I would maybe use both Spice Perfection and Dawn the Destroyer as C. But this is probably, with the exception of the Filly and Mare Turf, probably going to be one of the more of the formful races. At least kind of the ways that I got my ticket.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm I'm using Covfefe as a lone A right now. I do have Dawn Destroyer on my ticket as a B. Purely, she's one of those horses that I've always had a soft spot for, and I have no real legit reason for having a soft spot for her. I've always just kind of liked her. Seems like a real just solid trier. She's always that horse that she loves to hit the board. So if you're a vertical player, you kind of have to use her, I would assume. She's what is it, 13 of 19 hitting the board, and she doesn't win very often, but she's always really involved, and she's one of those ones at a price that could really blow this up if there's a lot of pace and this really melts. I do tend to agree that Come Dancing is sort of the better, slightly off the pace horse. But the other horse that none of us have talked about, and is kind of I think you sort of have to mention, is the 6, Bellafina. She's done nothing in her last 5 starts or so that would be really competitive in this field, but she is 4 for 4 with a Santa Anita track. And, there is an argument that can be made that if you toss out some of her races where she was going further than she wants to, and if you toss out races with her traveling, she's a legit contender in here. She's a horse that I have read is a B right now. I don't necessarily know. She's one of those horses you almost feel like she either has to be an A or you throw her off your ticket. I have her B right now. I want a little piece of her. Flavin Pratt is going to win some of these races in the Breeders' Cup, and she's an interesting horse if the value presents itself there. I don't know if 6-1 is the right value. I'd almost want a little more than that, but she's an interesting choice in here.
Yeah, I'm with you on the whole, maybe if you scratch out some races outside of California or routing, that she doesn't look as bad. But
if you ignore half the PP,
that's kind of my thing. Is like the other side of that argument is just that she hasn't progressed well into her 3-year-old season. And that's more of the camp I think I find myself in. She's a nice horse, but she's not running against 5-horse fields at Santa Anita anymore, which account for like 4 for 6 lifetime wins. I just, if she had a slightly different run style, I could be more easily sold. But she's a runner that does her best running, attending the pace, and I don't think she's going to get that kind of a setup here. I agree that if I am looking past the top 2, I kind of want some off the pace types, which landed, me as I haven't decided fully on structure, whether they're B's or C's, but Spice Perfection makes a lot of sense if you think the race gets a little bit melty. She had a really impressive effort last time out in the TCA at Keeneland. She fell on her face out of the gate, recovered, and got up in time, even beating Dawn the Destroyer. I think that horse makes a lot of sense here, but she will need to run a little bit faster to compete with the top 2. And Lady Ninja is the other one who I thought makes a little bit of sense here from an off the pace perspective. She was really not that good for a long time. I mean, running in some claiming races, but then ran some pretty respectable numbers lately. She's one that I'm kind of wavering between a B and a C. She loves Santa Anita, 6 for 10 here. She beat Selcourt, who's a pretty respectable sprinter, in California anyway. And she had just a horrible break 2-back in the grade 3 at Del Mar. So, outside of that, she's got, 3 wins out of her last 4, and only loss being with a terrible break. So I don't know that I love her, but I think that she's usable at a price if you think that it does get a little bit melty. And a horse that I think I'm going to throw on as a C, probably the longest price on the board, is my boy Luch, and Heaven Has My Nikki. This horse is probably not good enough to win, but the horse isn't so much slower that if Covfefe doesn't sit the right trip with the rail and gets burned up on the front end, Heaven Has My Nikki has speed, but doesn't necessarily need the lead. On Thoroughgraphs and Brisnet figures, she is slower, but not impossibly slower. I like her pattern coming out. She paired up her top effort last time, and that was first off of a layoff. She's an improving 4-year-old filly. And I do kind of think she makes a little bit of sense here from a bomb perspective. Maybe you don't use her on top, but She's just blown the doors off of the Thistledown races she's been in. She has a nice grade 3 over Pacific Gale and Separation of Powers, who are decent, grade 3 type horses. And she only lost a length to Midnight Beast back in Houston and Houston Lake. I don't think she's a likely winner, and I rarely play C's when I ABC a ticket. But she's the kind of C that's going to be 40-1 that I don't think is impossible to get it if everything happens to go right.
Comment from the chat. This man's insane. I'll hit the dislike button for that one.
I do tend to agree that that with the commentator in chat that is a little insane. I have a hard time having as my Nikki even to hit the board in this field. She seems like either she wins or she misses the board completely type. And honestly, I think she wants to go a little shorter than this. Sure, it's Breeders' Cup. Crazy things happen. But I think there's others in here personally that I would rather use. But, when Caleb has an opinion and says, oh, hey, I might try to get this horse into a try or a super, and, maybe she just hangs on and this comes apart, but she sucks up or she kind of coasts in for third or fourth. Hard time beating him up too much on it. But yeah, she won't be on any of my tickets.
Yeah, I know Caleb mentioned Selcourt a little bit. Selcourt would be a horse that I would be much more interested in if there were like one or two horses that weren't in this race. Particularly like Danus, because my girl wasn't in here. I would be a little bit more inclined to maybe take a chance at Selcourt as something a little bit a little sneaky. But I just think that Covfefe and Come Dancing they're both in great form, and from a speed figure perspective, at least on the Brisnut stuff, they're a level above pretty much anything else. With Spice Perfection probably being the only other thing that's close to them, and I think Spice Perfection technically has a little bit better of a pace setup here, but the nasty thing about Covfefe and Come Dancing is both of them have some late speed in them too. It's not just the early speed you gotta watch out for. Yeah, you guys got anything else in this race, or you guys want to move on?
Well, I think we beat every horse in here to death pretty much, so I think we're good.
Yeah, I'm gonna double down. I'll take Heaven Has My Nikki head to head, Danuska, Bellafina, or Selcourt.
Oh well,
I'll take that.
You'll take that? Are you serious? Dude, those
three... I think I would take that. I need one of them to finish in front of Heaven Is My Nikki. One of that three. I
was gonna say you could pick one, but if you want all three, that's fine too.
Dude, am I getting on to the thing, dude, is like if you pick any of those horses, like there's just as good of a chance that one of those horses runs third as they run last. Like, Selcourt might just fucking go out there and run 21 and change, and then just fucking finish last. So
and then stop. Yeah.
But while this race I think is fairly formful, we got this next race where I think when we were talking before the stream, Pack said he wrote. Is this the race you wrote 12 horses down?
Yeah, I have 12 horses. Yeah.
Aren't there 12 horses?
I think there are 12 horses. Yes. I think yes. Yeah. I did ABC.
I believe this is the old Allburger here, but the turf sprint being run at 5 furlongs, which I know a lot of people are very upset this is not going down the hill. And so if we're not going down the hill, we got 5 furlongs, which is real weird distance here. But Caleb, why don't you take first shot at this one?
Well, there's one horse that you guys know I really want to talk about, but I'm not going to start there.
Oh, come on! I want to start there.
All right, we'll start there. If you've ever watched this show, or in the past 2 months, I'm a huge Infamous fan. I think this horse is just stupid good, and he's had some stupid bad luck lately. The King Stand Stakes, it's hard to ship over season win. There's a reason nobody here does it except for Wesley Ward. And Blue Point's the best turf sprinter in the world, or was at the time. The horse came back, it's a tough to come back from overseas and got just 2 disastrous rides from Paco Lopez in both the Kentucky Downs race and then again at Keeneland. The Keeneland one wasn't quite as bad, but again, got this horse into traffic, stuck inside, and couldn't get this horse cleared or really set him down. I think this horse is still way better than what he's shown in his past 2. And you're going from Paco Lopez to Frankie Dettori. I mean, it's like eating bologna sandwiches your whole life and then getting a filet mignon. So, I mean, this is just a monumental jockey upgrade. I mean, it says something to me that Frankie chooses to get back on this horse after riding him once over an Ascot to a half decent 6th. And I just think this horse is really good. He drew well. I do think you want to be a little more towards the inside in this race. I think 5 furlongs is the perfect distance for this horse. I do think the 6 and even 5.5 is probably a touch longer than he wants to go. He's 7 for 10 at the 5 furlong distance. And the horse does have a little more speed than he's shown lately, just given some of the, tactics employed. So I don't expect him to be anywhere particularly close to the lead. I also don't think there's necessarily a lot of speed in this race, especially for a turf sprint. So I think Imprimis with the inside draw and a little bit of tactical speed is really dangerous in this spot. I don't know the price that we'll get, but I'm really hoping it's somewhere near that 8-1 that I'm seeing on the morning line. He's my 1A out of there's one other I have as a 1B, but there probably are, as much as I love him, about 3 horses that I'm going to use as A's in this race.
So before I just kind of want to bring this up real quick. So when you went and got a drink, I think a little bit before, or no, this was before you jumped on. Mark and I were just bullshitting a little bit. I'm gonna scroll up a little bit on this PP, just one spot. Just one spot. I'm gonna scroll up just one spot here and see a little name that you might be familiar with over here, Caleb. A little Paco Lopez on the 2. And I kind of wanted to ask, what are your feelings going to be if Paco Lopez goes ahead and wires this on the 2? How are you going to feel after that, Caleb?
When Paco wins on the 2?
Yeah.
You froze for a second.
When Paco wires this field on the 2, because that's what's going to happen.
That's the 1B to my 1A, and I won't that. I mean, Paco can ride him when he doesn't have to pass any horses or make decisions. That's not that hard. You just got to hold on. But, anytime he's coming from off the pace, I just don't think he's very good. But no, pure sensation is the speed of the race. There's not that much speed in the race, which is unusual. And he's got the inside draw, and Santa Anita turf sprints, especially since they've gone to 5 furlongs, have really been pretty speed friendly. Now, that being said, this race changes monumentally if the 13 Girls Know Best draws in. That really changes the composition and the pace scenario. But as it stands right now, there's, the Paco has every right to wire this race on the 2. I think the horse comes in off a pretty good pattern. Has to prove that he's not really just a park specialist as an 8-year-old. But I do think that horse makes a lot of sense. He's got the right rider for the run style. And, that's the other horse I was very interested in.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we were starting this, I had been pretty spready on this race. And if you're going to force me, though, to go to a horse, I think it is Pure Sensation. 5 furlongs is his distance. He's 11 for 19 at the distance. He's 3 for 3 with Paco up. Yeah, he's a bit of a park specialist. Yes, he's sort of picked and choose some of the lesser known turf sprints to really make his living at. But he is by far and away the most early speed here. And with how Santa Anita has been playing, it's been very early speed favoring and quite honestly inside speed favoring. So, I want a lot of Pure Sensation. I think there's a chance that he breaks well, gets a little comfortable on the front end. And this is, and it's him and Paco together are the absolute perfect combo. So I think with how this track is playing, I think he makes just an absolute ton of sense. Now, I mean, I can talk about a lot of others in here, but I think I want more of Pure Sensation than I want anybody else in this race. But I do understand your Imprimis. He's definitely also quite good at the distance. He's a horse that sort of 5 furlongs, because there's a huge difference between a 5 and a 6 furlong horse. He is one that 5 furlongs seems to hit, right? It'd be absolutely a perfect distance for him. He's very, very well at it. And arguably that Silk Run that he ran at Gulfstream Park is the best race of his career at 5 furlongs. So, he makes a lot of sense. I think this is one of those races, though. You can get a little spready. You can get cute if you like a horse in here that you feel is illogical. Like I said, I think I have 12 horses on my ticket. I'll be ABC spreading it. There's a lot of ways you can go in here, and I don't. There's no massive standout here. It's one where if the favorite wins and it goes off at 3-1. It wouldn't surprise me if a 20-1 shot, it wins this. It also wouldn't really surprise me. I expect a blanket finish, and I think this is a really intriguing betting race.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this race is my 2 top picks in this race, you guys didn't talk about either of them, so I guess I'll get to work here. We've talked about how trashy these West Coast turf horses are. Unfortunately for me, I think my 2 top choices are going to be some of these trashy West Coast types here. The number 1 pick I got here going is going to be Eddie Haskell. Now, the reason why I decided to go with Eddie Haskell here is looking at some of these horses' forms. There's not a lot of 5 furlong form on a lot of these horses. So I decided to go ahead and make my number 1 pick here. Going to be a kind of West Coast specialist. Has won at Santa Anita twice already. Actually, 3 times this year if you go back to February. Rosario has ridden this horse before, and Rosario is just a different jockey on the West Coast. Now, it could be the weaker Jock Colony on the West Coast that elevates him. It could be he just loves Santa Anita. I don't know, but I really think that Eddie Haskell is going to be in a real good spot here. He's going to be coming. He's going to be forwardly placed, probably about 2 lengths off the lead, but I think he's going to probably get first run on most of these horses here. I think that some of these other horses actually just want a little bit more distance. The other horse that I'm going to go with here is going to be Belvoir Bay, the 12. Once again, this is another kind of West Coast specialist, but did run in Dubai, ran second to probably the best turf sprinter that we had this year in Blue Point before Blue Point retired, and has won at Santa Anita at this 5 furlong distance. Yes, it was a restricted stakes, but the figure, at least on Brisnet, came back pretty well. Now, we do have Castellano aboard, and I don't know how much Javier knows this horse, but that big effort in Dubai, did bounce or not have as great of efforts these last 2, but at 12-1 or better, I'll take a shot with this horse. This horse loves Santa Anita, and 9 races, Santa Anita's won 6 of them. So I'm kind of taking a horse for course angle here in this race, for better or for worse. I do, just like the rest of you guys, I do like, let me scroll down here. I do like both, Imprimis, I think, has got a chance in here as well. The 5 Stubbins, coming from slightly off the pace, I think is also an interesting horse, as well as a 7 Leinster. So I think I'm probably going to get a little spready here. I did write down, like I was with Pag, I started just writing horses down, and at some point I realized I could probably pick every single horse here. But as we talked about a little bit yesterday, I'm not going more than 3 wide or 4 wide in any leg. And once I start getting all these horses in here, I'm gonna probably stick with my 2 A picks here, the 10 and the 12, and hope that it's gonna get me a little separation here. Although I think technically Eddie Haskell is the morning line favorite here, but I don't know if he's gonna end up as the betting favorite here, but we'll see.
Yeah, I was just saying the one horse in here that we haven't talked about yet that I have as an A on my tickets and I don't know how to properly pronounce the name, but it is the 4 Shaky Shabazz. This horse has been a completely different animal after moving to the Jason Service Barn. Massive step up in class, or massive step up in speed figs. Horses run 102 by our last 2 races, and although it does not have that start at 5 furlongs, does have some 5 or 2 for 2 at 5.5 furlongs. A horse that I think is going to be very forwardly placed. Has the speed of the speed sort of drawn inside. Can probably sit off Pure Sensation and maybe get that sort of first run close. Rad. I think Rad did a really good job in the Belmont Turf Sprint last out. And is a horse that at 12-1 on the morning line, I think there's a lot of value there. For Shaky. Now, obviously, I'm expecting somebody to beat me up on this horse because, for some reasons, mainly the fact of like the 15 artificial starts in a row, but and sort of that service jump. Is this horse really fey here? But it's one that the numbers work for me, and I think there's a lot of value there. I think it's kind of horse where, from a value play, you make an A.
I mean, like the pace figures, I think definitely match up here, especially in as far as early speed. And looking at his last race at Belmont, maybe the horse just does want shorter. Did fade a little bit, got caught by Final Frontier at 6 furlongs, but that race run at 5.5 furlongs, I don't think he gets caught. If you look at the race at Saratoga, if you look at the splits, very similar, 22-2, 44-2 versus 22-2 and 44-1. I don't think he gets caught at 5.5. So at 5, maybe he's even more dangerous. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the big knock here, I think, probably on this horse is the fact of got claimed for 25K 3 back, and has nothing but overnight stakes wins. Has never even run in a graded stakes. Now, this probably isn't the strongest year of the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and with the fact that it's at 5 furlongs, it's sort of a wild card year. But if you're somebody who really is interested in class, this is a horse that does not stand out on that class those class numbers or class figs.
As much as I'd like to, beat you up on Shiki Shabazz, after the Heaven Has My Nikki stuff, I can't knock anybody for taking any pace horse in this race. These races are won so often on or near the lead, and it's a big field. If you're trying to close, you're going to get stuck wide. You're going to have traffic to deal with. So I don't really like Shiki Shabazz that much, mostly for the reasons you already pointed out. But I can't knock the pick, and especially if you get something near 12-1. Even, Eddie Haskell was one of my top picks, like Josh mentioned, and I don't really like California horses, especially on grass, but this horse makes a lot of sense here. Even Belvoir Bay is another one who has some speed. So anything with pace, I don't think is a bad bet in this spot. So no, I'm kind of with you guys. I didn't use Shaky Shabazz. I ended up with Pure Sensation, Imprimis, and Eddie Haskell as my top picks. I'll probably have 2 or 3 behind them. I will be pretty spready in this race in some fashion.
Shaky Shabazz is 2 for 2 at the distance.
Yeah, but the thing is, when they're saying that he's 2 for 2 at 5.5, he has not run a 5 furlong race. So I think they're ignoring that half. They're ignoring that half furlong. Yeah, I saw the same thing. It was like, wait a second, and I was like, wait, where are these 5 furlong races?
Dude, I was like scrolling down. I was like, man,
yep.
These horses are a lot better at this distance than what when I actually looked at the PP. But that makes sense. Stupid lazy ass PP.
Yeah, they're rounding it, which whatever. Honestly, when you get into run up distance change, a 5 and a 5.5 at a lot of track to track could be the same distance. So yeah. But I do agree. I think he's the one that probably wants that little bit shorter distance, and pedigree sort of does agree with that as well.
All right, let's move on here. Let's move on to the 6th race. Continuing on here, we got the Dirt Mile. Big ass fans, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Did you guys see that? Apparently, on some of the marketing stuff, in the commercials, they took the ass out.
So it's Big Fans Dirt
So,
Mile.
yeah, well, I think it's still gonna be the
Big
big ass fans
Fans.
dirt mile, but like there's like a commercial or something that they were like running, and it's just big fans with the ass out.
So Josh, does that mean that you're a fan of the Dirt Mile?
Dude, I'm a big fan of dirt
You're a
mile.
big dude. Just saying. So
Yeah. So here, I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom here because if you guys haven't seen the way I kind of handicap races, I tend to start, especially with these Brisnet PPs, I tend to start here at the bottom. I did write down there are 3 horses here that I'm gonna go with. One of which is definitely not Omaha Beach. Taking a look at this race from a pace perspective, I see a lot of this, forwardly placed horses here. I know it's only a mile, so once again, when you're at a mile distance, it is a 2-turn mile. But at a mile distance, speed tends to still hold pretty decently. But you're starting to get into the point where something like a pace collapse is a little bit more probable to happen, I guess. But there are 3 horses here that I'm really interested in. The second choice here, Improbable. I mean, I don't know how many more times I'm going to bet this horse. This is probably going to be the last time I bet this horse if this horse doesn't win. But at least on a pace figure standpoint, this horse I think fits this race really well. Has shown enough early speed to not just get completely blown out, and I think has enough of a late kick that I think that, especially if the pace sets up the way I think it's going to, I think that this horse is going to have a real good shot at sitting just off the pace and winning this. The other 2 horses I want are going to be at a little bit more of a price. The 4, Mr. Money, who I've probably been on and hoping for this spot to bet this horse for a while. I think Mr. Money wants a mile, and I think that's going to be his best distance going forward. And especially if this horse ends up being 4th or 5th choice, I am going to be all about this horse. So hopefully, horses like Coal Front and Spun to Run and Improbable and Omaha Beach take a little bit more money, because I am definitely all about Mr. Money here. And then I do have a long shot pet play here that I'm definitely going to incorporate as an A here, and is going to be kind of my price play. And it's going to be the 10, Snapper Sinclair. Once again, from a pace perspective, I was looking at this race, and I saw a fair bit of early speed or horses that want to be a length or closer to the lead, pressing that pace. I think from all the horses here, with the exception of Improbable, Snapper Sinclair has got the highest late pace figure here, and has averaged, or I think he's only ran a mile 1 here, so that's probably why he's got that 114 there. But had that real impressive win actually at Kentucky Downs. I know he's switching from turf to dirt, but I'm really interested to take a shot at this horse, especially if we get even anywhere remotely close to this 30-1. I think that is a huge overlay. I'm sure that this horse is going to get bet down, because somebody else has got to see that there's no way this horse should be anywhere close to 30-1. But anything around like 15 to 20-1, I definitely want a ton of this horse. The 10 here. What do you think over there, Pack?
Yeah, I mean, I think the race, when you start talking about this race, this is another race that has one really likely horse, and that's Omaha Beach. I think you have to, how you look at this race really depends on your feelings on Omaha Beach. Obviously last time out, he beat Chancelot, who was basically considered the fastest sprinter in the world or something like that. Extremely, extremely hyped Chancelot, and was very impressive in beating him by a head. And off from a crazy long layoff. And it sort of becomes that game. And obviously, Omaha Beach was very highly touted in the spring. Obviously, some things went wrong, and he off the long layoff, and he's getting back into it now. for me, I think Omaha Beach is a horse that you sort of have to use at least in horizontals. I understand Josh's logic of tossing him, and knowing how Josh plays, that doesn't surprise me at all that he's doing that. But for me, I think I have to put Omaha Beach on top. Has that big fig at six furlongs. We know he can get the mile very well. Mile actually may be the optimal distance for him. It may be really what he wants. And he's 2 for 3 at Santa Anita, and has never missed the board here as well. So we know he gets across the surface. Multiple graded stakes winner, a multiple G1 winner, quite honestly. And I think he just, as far as class and honestly speed as well, I think he's really, really stands out here. Behind Omaha Beach, there's a few others I want. I have my absolute probably bomb on the card that I'm using. I don't know. Caleb, what's your feelings on Omaha Beach?
Well, he's one of the horses that I don't like when they're in a race, because he's going to be an overwhelming favorite, and I can't not use him, but I can't use him confidently either. It's a horse who's looked, like the best 3-year-old in the country at times, when he's been right. But my biggest concern with him is just that he's going to regress off that last effort. My biggest concern with him going into the Kentucky Derby was he was going to regress off his Arkansas effort, which was really good. And there's a school of thought out there that would suggest, he almost did regress. He had some health issues, took some time off, came back and ran another huge fig at Santa Anita Sprint. He now has to go 2 turns. I think he's the most talented horse in this field by a country mile, or by a country house maybe. But I do think that
dude, I still need a trigger warning. That's it's still too soon. Okay, it's still too soon.
Yeah, so I do think Omaha Beach is a horse you have to use if you're playing. This pick 5 or pick 4 or anything. He's a very logical single. If you have the bankroll to try to spread, I think you should, because I do think there's a chance he can regress or, bounce, if you will, off that last monster effort. And if he does, there's a few others in here who aren't that far behind him. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually agree with Josh about Improbable, that I've been against this horse for like a year. But my biggest knocks against him were always the price and the distance. For the longest time, I thought this horse was distance compromised and didn't want to be going. He wasn't a classic distance horse, despite what Baffert tried to do with him. But when he's been at these shorter distances, these mile and a 16th, he's been really good. He's undefeated at a mile. He really, his only bad races have come in the Kentucky Derby and then in the Preakness. And then he was a little bit flat in the Pennsylvania Derby when he had a pretty bad start. That's going to be key to him, is that this is a horse who's a little bit of a head case and breaks pretty poorly all the time. Baffert tried blinkers. It didn't seem to help all that much. But when this horse is right, he's really good. Baffert was working some of his horses the other day and interviewed him about 8 Rings and about McKenzie. And they didn't really ask about Improbable. And he actually brought it up in the interview saying, well, hey, aren't you going to ask me about Improbable? And was just glowing about how this horse was training. If you follow anything Baffert says, he's not one of the guys that's going to give you some of the trainer speak bullshit. If he thinks his horse is, just in there to try his best, he'll let you know. And if he thinks he has, a real live one, he's generally not going to hide that either. So I do think Improbable is coming into this in peak form and is not that far behind Omaha Beach if Omaha Beach would happen to misfire. So those are the 2 that I'm probably most excited to use. There's a couple others I'd look at. It's an interesting race from like a pace perspective, because it looks like Coal Front's going to be your leader, and then you have about 6 horses that want to sit second. So it's an interesting pace dynamic as to I could easily see this melting. It turns into a race for second almost behind Coal Front, and I could also see this being pretty modest on the front end if Coal Front is able to get out front and then they bunch up behind him and stay pretty tight. In which case, I think Coal Front has a decent chance. he's never quite ran back to that Godolphin mile form. But I do think that his best race puts him right in the mix with these.
Yeah. Just a touch real quick on Improbable again. I'm just gonna pull up here real quick. The one thing that really stuck out to me about Improbable is Improbable, at least looking back on his PP, has got two, I think, standout races, and both of them I think were at a mile. He's got the Shared Belief this year, and then if you scroll back, the Los Al Future, or not the Los Al, or the Street Sense. I think those two might have been his two best races, especially if you're looking at the pace figures. I think the Pennsylvania Derby, he tried to sit off the pace, and I just don't think that was the right thing. He was 3 lengths off, and I don't think he was going to catch up. I mean, I know Math Wizard, made up ground and ended up winning and upsetting everything, but I definitely think that he's the type of horse that wants to be 1.5 lengths, off the lead. And I mean, does have a decent kick, but I just think that if you look at his two best races, I mean, look at this this turn time. You got your 4 here, and then you got 16 here in the Shared Belief, which is just ridiculous. So if we see anything close to a Shared Belief, I just don't think that.
Yeah, I mean, Improbable to me is just, I don't know. He's a horse that I've never really liked. Didn't like him going into the Derby. Didn't really like him in any of the preps. Just felt that, I don't know, something always felt off about him. With sort of how he was campaigned by Baffert, and that
Campaign's
whole,
not in this race. He's
okay.
He's running the first race, I think, on Friday, right?
Damn it! I screw that up all the time. I never really. He's just a horse that I never trusted, and he's just. I mean, I'll use him. I will use him defensively. He's a horse I feel like you have to be in the conversation, and he's a must sort of use horse if you're trying to play a horizontal where you're staying alive. But for me, he's not a horse that I trust at all, and not one that I really want to get behind. For me, I'm more comfortable with Omaha Beach. I think he seems to be rounding into form, seems to be becoming a better horse. Figs are definitely improving, where I don't know if I can necessarily say that about Improbable. Yeah, I guess if you toss out the races that aren't at a mile, his form gets flattered quite a bit, but is it really taking Baffert that long to figure out that he's a miler? I don't know. It's just a horse that I just don't trust him. Let's put it that way. I will in here say that Caleb mentioned Coal Front. I really like Coal Front a lot in here. I think there's a case to be made that he can get out and get loose on the front end. I think the last time that they ran the Breeders' Cup Mile at Santa Anita, it was stolen from a horse loose on the lead on the front end. So I think that's very plausible to have happen here. And Coal Front with JJ up, I think JJ kind of, he's another jock that I really like loose on the front end. I think his sort of style and his being very smart positionally is absolutely perfect for this horse, even though it's his first time ever on Coal Front. Couple of pricier horses that I really kind of dig in here a little bit.
I already put it up. You can talk about it.
Did you already?
It's already
up. Okay. So Blue Chipper, I realize this horse is just sort of one of those out of left field horses. If you look back, that race at Busan, horse set the track record at a mile at that track. And if you watch that, it's extremely visually impressive. And then in his last race, the Korean Sprint Championship, he if you watch it again, very, very, very impressive race. He's very game. He's 7 for 8 lifetime. Obviously, this ownership is taking a shot. They decided to ship him over, see if he's legit. He's been very much called the best horse in Korea. Now, I realize he's racing in Korea, not the deepest pool. It's not like he's racing in Japan or someplace with a deeper pool. But he's almost a millionaire. Solid pedigree. A horse that seems like they've campaigned him very smartly. If you watch his, Flippin' Pratt has had a chance to both get a jog in him and get a work into him. So he should understand the horse a little bit. I've heard he's a bit of a quirky horse, a little bit tough to ride, but at 20 to 1, he's a really interesting horse. And from what I've heard and what I've seen, that work is going to come back very strong. Now he hasn't gotten.
Does Flavian Pratt speak Korean though?
I think Flavian is a very talented jock, and I'm sure he can figure out the language barrier. So he's one that is one of those horses that you kind of scratch your head like, why is he here? But I find him very, very interesting. In a field where I sort of want a couple of logicals and a couple of bombs. I sort of don't like the horses in the middle. There's a lot of horses here I don't like, so I'm looking for a real upside potential. And I think it's a value proposition sort of thing with Blue Chipper. He's not going to be an A; he'll be a B at best. But the other horse is Diamond Oops, who threw out a work that was just absolutely absurd. I can dig it out, but he's been training. Training in Florida, I think, and his work was just absolutely like lights out. I'll dig it up at some point here, but I don't necessarily love Julian being the jock here, but he's a horse that works are going to be real strong, and seems to be sort of rounding into form. And if you look at his, Vanderbilt 2 back, that sort of fig in this sort of a field, would make him a massive competitor. He's off from that sort of a fig. He competes here. You're getting 15 to 1. Yeah, it's a bit of a lottery ticket, but it's the kind of thing where in the Breeders' Cup, crazy things happen. And at that sort of price, and I bet you he goes off at more than 15 to 1. At that sort of a price, he's a real interesting horse. And again, he sort of fits that Santa Anita run style. He'll be forwardly placed. Again, I think Caleb was talking that bunch that's going to be kind of fighting for, sitting just off from Coal Front. He's going to be in that bunch. And I just, I think there's enough there to kind of go, I wonder if he's an improving 4-year-old at the end of his 4-year-old campaign. And maybe he takes another step forward.
When would you have ever thought that Mark would be on a Julian Leparoux? Outside of Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite is French Strangler, who, I would be much more high on him with a different jockey, but he's quite interesting here.
Yeah, Diamond Oops is interesting. He's improving for sure. Yeah, I don't like the fact that he's kind of been all over the place, sprinting on dirt, routing on turf, routing on dirt now. But he seems to handle it all, so he's got some. He fits on figs, so I don't hate that pick, especially at the price. If you happen to get 15 to 1, I just can't fucking get behind Blue Chipper. I'm sorry.
But... Dude, Caleb, anytime you're like, yeah, that's interesting. That's like the horse racing, the Southern horse racing version of "Oh, bless their heart."
Yeah, oh, bless your heart. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go, the Master Fencer remix, maybe this horse clunks up for 4th, but I just can't see it, not in this field.
I can't fault you. I mean, for me, he's a horse that you either go, that's really interesting, or you go, oh my God, that's the world's easiest toss. It's one way or the other. And I think he's a horse that if for some reason he is legit and somehow manages to win this, he's absolutely going to blow up tickets, and the value is definitely going to be there. And I would rather take a shot on a horse that's an unknown quantity than sort of try to hope that a known quantity steps up and improves. Again, I'm talking horses that I'm not going to use these heavily. These are going to be B's or C's, but they're horses that I find interesting in those sorts of positions. Occasionally, you find a Cummings. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think though there's the real only horse that we didn't really talk about that I think might be my lone B, because I think I'm really just going to try and fade Omaha Beach here. Too much, probably my failure, but we'll see. Is a 3 Spun to Run. as far as, once again, looking at pace figs, I think that this horse, fits in really well. Has got that nice turn speed there, and still has a late kick. I mean, in each of his last 3 races, way over 100 on that late pace. So I think that this horse is definitely in here with a pretty good shot, and I think 6 to 1 is a pretty square price. Um, I'd probably take a shot at anything like 5 to 1 or above with this horse. It has IRAD aboard, so I think that this horse, has fired 2 pretty good races this year, with the Smarty Jones, and I have no idea what the heck the last race he ran in, but it was a mile at Parks, um, and that was against Older. So, I'm pretty interested in maybe taking a shot with the 3. I think he's going to be a little bit shorter than the other horses I'm kind of looking to hit a price with here. But at least on Brisnet, Brisnet's got him rated as the top horse. And that last race is pretty good. I don't think it's as good as Improbable's best race, but I definitely think that this horse deserves to be up there with top 2 or 3 choices.
The one thing I will say about Splendorun is, and I know Tom's going to get on here and beat me up for this, but if you're looking up, a horse that is a bounce candidate, at least on Bear Figs, he improved 14 points at the end from his 2 back to his last race. To me, that's the type of horse I expect to bounce and regress. And this wasn't a steady improvement. It was a massive jump up in Figs. And he absolutely, lights out winner, won by 6 3/4 in the last out at a mile. Maybe he's just wanted to be a miler all along. Maybe a mile and 8, a little bit rating the mile and 8th, mile and 16th is just a little too long for him. But he's the kind of horse that I think I would tend to fade just on that bounce candidate, especially if I'm only getting 6 to 1 there.
Yeah, I mean, on the Brisnet, he also has a big jump up on speed figs. I don't trust Park's speed figs as a rule of thumb. They always seem to come back high, just like Mountaineer and a few others. On Thoroughgraphs, it was only a 1 point improvement, which is really not that significant. So I don't know that he was super bounces. I just don't think he's good enough. And if I want a 6 to 1 horse, I'd probably go to Mr. Money or Coal Front before I go to him.
Yeah, I would definitely go to Coal Front over him. I would completely agree with you there. Mr. Money, I have a little bit of a harder time getting behind, but Coal Front I would agree with.
All right, let's move on to the Breeders' Cup Sister Charlie Stakes.
Yeah, with the one scratch, it's
Magical
Charlie Stakes without Magical.
Yeah. So the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, mile and a quarter on the turf. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. I think last week. If I owned any piece of Mirth, I would be furious right now. I would be absolutely furious into how Face got into this race. I have no idea how Face was able to get in here. Because if you look everywhere else, I don't really think that there's much speed in here. And last time out, Mirth was able to steal a real nice race on the front end. I believe it was here at Santa Anita. Yep, the Rodeo Drive. With Mike Smith aboard, and stole it on the front end. Caught everybody sleeping, and I think he would have had it, or she would have had a chance to do the same thing here. But we know Peter M. Brandt and his Pace Car Stables, as the guys from the In the Money podcast like to call it. They're just gonna send, and I know I think Caleb and I were talking that Phil D'Amato's like, hey, we're just gonna let Mirth pretend that horse isn't out there in front of us and just have her run her race. But yeah, I mean, we've seen this show about 3 or 4 times this year at this point, and Sister Charlie's gonna probably just pick up the pieces and win this one going away.
Yeah, I tend to agree on Sister Charlie. I mean, she's been just absolutely phenomenal since she moved into the Chad Brown barn after shipping to the States. She's just an absolute monster. She, on paper, towers over this field. You'd really hoped that one of the big name European fillies would have shipped in for this. And just none of them really did. The Europeans that came over for this are more G2, G3 types, and Sister Charlie is a legit G1 horse. She's the real deal. And yeah, I think this is one of, if you're a skinnier player, this is your free square, kind of, in this part of the card. She's an absolute monster. I really, really love her. The only horse I have her as my lone A. The only other horse that I'm kind of interested as a B is Villa Marina. Purely on the fact that if you do the conversion, she's the horse that on Figs is the closest to her. That 114 time form is like a 96, 97 buyer sort of range. They're not taking Lasix, which I kind of find odd. But Olivier Peslier ships over to ride this horse. I think this is his only mount on the entire card. And that the Prix de l'Opera is on the ARC undercard, and it's effectively, if you're not riding in the ARC, that is the premier race. Race for fillies in Europe, sort of this time of the year, that later season, and she won that. So she's a horse that. I don't know if you look at it and say, geez, the soft turf flattered her, or is she just consistently getting better? She needs a bit of a step forward here to really compete, but she's a horse that if you want to include that Euro, that's the Euro that I want.
Yeah, I think Sister Charlie's probably the horse to beat here. Is obviously the horse to beat. I'm disappointed Magical, couldn't make it. I was taking a shot against Sister Charlie with Magical. I was taking a shot against Bricks and Mortar if Magical went there. I was really worse. So I'm disappointed by that. This race is less fun to handicap and bet now for me. Just to play the devil's advocate a little bit, if you look at Sister Charlie's last race, it doesn't come back that strong on speed figures. It comes back as like a 92 on Brisnet. I don't know what it came back on the buyer scale.
It's a 95 on buyer. I know where you're going. That's the one knock I have. Is she tailing off? Tailing off on the back end of this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to look at the other side of the coin. She is. She's 5 years old now. She had a delayed start to her 5-year-old campaign after having a little bit of soundness issues earlier this year. She looked good in the Diana and the D, but the Flower Bowl. Well, the result didn't ever seem like it was in question. It wasn't the strongest field, and she really just didn't beat them the way that we've grown accustomed to seeing her win races. So do you think that the visuals kind of match the speed fig, and do you think that she might be tailing off a little bit? Or do you just think that Tice, after going pretty quick to the, quarter mile, really slowed down that pace to the half and then to the 5 mile marker? And do you think that maybe that lower speed fig is just a result of the slow pace?
I tend to actually look at it a little bit of a different way. I think that Diana that she ran was an absolutely monstrous race. And even though the figs only came back the same as the Beverly D, I think that Diana took a ton out of her. I think the Beverly D was an easier race on her. I think she was the one horse that wanted that sort of a distance. I think Awesome Tank is really a miler. And and so I think she got a big fig, but I think it was a little easier in that race, and that's why the fig came back better. I'm wondering, is she still sort of recovering from that Diana? And you can look at it a bunch of different ways. I think if you're trying to pick her apart, maybe is she tailing off a little towards the end of her 5-year-old season? Maybe is she getting a little over this whole racing thing? Wouldn't surprise me. I still expect her to run huge in here. She hasn't shown anything other than the fact that she's just an absolute legit horse. You're really sort of reaching to find holes or a chink in her armor. I guess as a handicapper, that's what you do. But I think I have a hard time really putting anybody, the distance between Sister Charlie and everybody else in this field is pretty large with how I look at it.
Yeah, and I mean, truthfully, I agree with you. Kind of bringing that conversation up. I do think Sister Charlie, whether she's tailing off a touch or, it was a slow fig due to the pace or something else.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a strong field she's up against. There are no, 3-year-old Wild Illusions in this race. There are no, I mean, her biggest threats in this race would probably be from her own table.
Yeah, I mean, there's no Rushing Fall in here. There's no Homerique in here. There's none of those. Right. There's those legit horses. Yeah.
So I ended up, I probably, we've said 3 times now, well, if you're playing skinny, you can single Covfefe, or if you're playing skinny, you can single Omaha. Like, this is the strongest single in the card, as far as I'm concerned. The best single, the most heavily singled horse. So, if you want to play through this horse, it makes a lot of sense. But if you want to try to beat this horse, the return is going to be better than beating either of the 2 favorites in Omaha Beach or Covfefe, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree.
So what I'll probably end up doing is probably running in maybe A with 1B and then a couple C's. I might just run all C's. And the horses I was looking at, Odessa, I'm a little interested in that horse. She stays 1.25 miles back, a few back at the Curragh, which was a pretty good race. Then she didn't fire at all, going 1.5 miles. Comes back and, runs pretty good at the Fast and Rock Matron Stakes, and then just runs a decent race in the Sun Chariot. But, you could argue that maybe she just didn't like the turf that day. It's tough to say. I think every horse in here needs to improve in order to really challenge Sister Charlie. She does get a 4-pound weight break, and she does get Lasix. So I do think that's worth something. She's also a 3-year-old who has every right to continue improving. So she's one I'm a little interested in. A lot of that argument I also apply to the horse that Mark brought up earlier, which was the 9 Villa Marina. I also like that horse. The Prix Stella Opera is, like you said, probably the best undercard race on the ARC card over there at Longchamp. That was a really, really good win. And then after that, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I didn't entirely hate Vasily in this spot as far as the American contingent goes. She's a C at best, but the horse is consistent. Her run in the Keeneland race, the First Lady, it was good. She got a good pace to run at, and she was never beating Uni that day. Uni crushed the track record, and I think Vasilika's effort might get a little bit lost in that. I have a hard time fading a horse that's 11 of 12 at a track, with the one loss being a second place finish. And even though I don't think she's probably up to snuff with the rest of these, she's playing in her own backyard, and I do think that's worth something here. And yeah, if Sister Charlie does tail off form, this race all of a sudden becomes a lot more open. Like, logical at that point. So I don't really love her, but I think that she is one that, I may use because I think the price is going to be right. And I think that she could be one of the logical race. Sister Charlie does not run hers.
Yeah, I agree with this Vasilika, or however you say it. A horse that I absolutely hate, but a horse that is your quintessential horse for course angle horse. She's done all her best stuff at Santa Anita. 11 of 18 career wins have come at Santa Anita. This is her house. She's comfortable here. She's on paper just not good enough to beat this field. And I don't really think she, I don't see how she gets it set up where she does. But Flavien Prat has a way of sort of stealing races, and I don't know how it happens, but it can be set. Crazier things have happened. I honestly think you need a little better than 8-1 to really get behind her. But odds sometimes in the Breeders' Cup can get wonky, and if you could get say 10-1, 12-1 on her, she becomes a little interesting. But yeah, on my tickets, C at best.
And I'm pretty much with you guys. I think this is a single A. Charlie. If I am playing C's, I do have 3 of them here. The 5 Mirth. I know Thace is probably just gonna fuck everything, but Mirth is gonna probably be that horse that's gonna be in second place. Hopefully, a couple lengths behind, and we'll see if is able to stay and make a little noise here. Might be a good underneath play if you're gonna try and play an exacta or something like that. Vasilika, the 7, right there with you guys. I think the horse or course angle is at least good enough to make this horse a C in here. And then the other horse that I'm going to use is the horse that finished second to Sister Charlie this last time out, and that's Mississippi, the 10. You look back 2 races in Mississippi's first race here in the U.S. Didn't have much pace to run into, and still was able to close pretty strongly and win the Glens Falls. So gonna probably have just as little pace to run into here because you only really have Thace and Mirth. But if for some reason Sister Charlie doesn't fire, Mississippi only finished 3/4 of a length back. So that might be another probably of the closers, the other one I want outside of Sister Charlie here.
Yeah, I think we've probably talked this one to death. We're getting all sorts of flack in British Cup right now, so
yeah, because it's just going to be the 2 horse that wins anyways.
It's just a Charlie show. Yeah.
Well, let's why don't we get to the last race that we got for today? The 6th or the 8th race, sorry, the 6 furlong British Cup sprint here. I think you took that last one, Pack. So Caleb, what do you got here?
Yeah, this is a fun race. It's probably the race that I'm the most excited about watching, arguably the entire weekend. Up there with the distaff maybe. So there's a couple different ways you can go in this race, and I feel kind of a little bit lame because I ended up on what I think every in this race. I don't have the confidence in any horse to single or get skinny. Gun to my head, I probably go to Matoli. That horse has been just otherworldly. He has 1 loss in his last, 9 races, and that was only when he got a terribly dead rail at Saratoga and the Vanderbilt, and Imperial Hint absolutely freaked. So yeah, this horse fits anywhere from 6 furlongs to a 1-turn mile. So the 7 furlongs shouldn't be a problem for him. I'm sorry, the 6 furlongs shouldn't be a problem. I love the fact that he shipped in early. That can be a big deal for a lot of horses, especially ones that are coming, across the country and shipping in late. Because we mentioned last night, Santa Anita is a very unique surface right now. It is very deep and very tiring. And this horse shipped in beginning of October and has been working pretty steadily since. And the works have just gotten better and better and better. That October 22nd bullet where he went 58-4 out of the gate, over that Santa Anita track, that is just incredibly fast. That is, Baffert was, being interviewed about his own horses. And he came back and said, well, I was okay with my horse going 101. I thought the track was slow. And then I saw Matoli work. So now I'm not sure. That's huge praise. This horse is, a beast and is a deserving favorite to be sure. The big question mark is really just, do you want 9-5 on any horse in a field that's this salt? And from a vertical perspective, I would probably say no. But from a horizontal perspective, I do think that the top 3 choices are probably going to play a little similarly. Matoli will be the shortest, I think. And then I do think Chancelot and Imperial Hint are going to be your next 2 logical picks. So those were kind of the 3 I ended up on, with maybe one more as a underneath or C level kind of play. But curious to see where you guys ended up.
Yeah, I think there's the 3 logicals in here, and I end up with the same exact 3 as Caleb. I would probably use them, gun to my head in a different order. I would probably have Imperial Hant on top, just in the fact that he absolutely, freaked in his Vanderbilt, set a track record, and was just, absolutely massively impressive. Obviously, Mitoli got the dead rail, um, but had a layoff, and I think that Vosberg was a little bit of a. I realize it's probably too long to be calling it a bounce, but a little bit of a bounce race. You had that sort of massive freak, and then you need that little sort of a race to get back into things. I would expect this to be an improvement again. I would expect it to be closer to that Vanderbilt race. So I would probably have Imperial Hant on top. I really love Chance. I think Chance makes a lot of sense here, albeit his last two races have been a little bit head scratching. And then obviously Mitoli just makes a ton of sense. My issue with Mitol is not so much his chance of winning; it's the price you're going to get on him. He's going to be very short. Obviously he's just the easiest horse to pick out. He just wins all the time. He's been an absolute monster. Nothing wrong. Doesn't have any issues. He's just been very sound. Very well managed horse. What's not to like? Yeah, I mean, I think those are the three logicals, and then I think after those three, those were my three A's, and then I didn't have a single B, and then I kind of went to C's after that, and I think there's an argument to be made for a lot of horses. If this race gets wonky on the front end, and I can see a situation where and obviously it's a sprint race, these don't fall apart a ton. There's a lot of horses in here I wish had gone to the mile instead, because I think they would have had a much better shot of actually hitting the board there. But if there's a situation where you have, something like a Matol and a Chance and Imperial Hant, there's an argument meant to be out there that they could all three hook up, get really stupid on the front end if with everybody knowing Santa Anisa's speed favorite as it is, and set it up for a closer. And then there's a number of closers in here that you could pick. Favorite one I would probably have is Whitmore, because I have a soft spot for him. But you could also kind of end up on High Creek Hustle, or even like a Friesen's Fire, who's going to be that horse that's going to be just off that early pace, and should be the logical one to pick up the pieces, even though he absolutely hates.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar to you guys. Once again, just like how Mark had put it, I'm just in a slightly different order. I actually, against my better judgment, I have two horses up top. I have Imperial Hant, who I really just like in this spot, and then I also have Chancelot here. I think these are going to be my two horses I'm going to key off of here. I go back and forth. The more I think about it, the more I do think I need to use probably Mitoli as another A here as well. But I think that I like Chancelot and Imperial Hant just a little bit more than Mitoli, and at on the morning line at least at what is double the price. And with Landeskog being scratched out of here, I think that makes Chancelot even a little bit more dangerous, because I do think that he's probably the speed of the speed here, but Mitoli and Imperial Hant are both really freaking fast horses as well. If I were to take a closer here, I'm going to take a chance here, and I'm going to go with the 2 Hog Creek Hustle. Is the lone what we like to call the S-type here. Did have that real big race a couple races back. He's scrolling up. Did have that big race at the Woody Stevens. Ended up winning that one from pretty far out. And I think I'm pretty much basing my opinion on that one. His H. Allen Jerkins was pretty good too. Finished second by a nose to Mind Control, who's a pretty decent horse, and just had that real good closing kick in that race. Now the Phoenix left a lot to be desired, and is also run at the same distance here. That's 6 furlongs. So maybe Hog Creek Hustle probably wants more like 7 furlongs or a mile. But if for some reason this does get real crazy on the front end, I think something like Hog Creek Hustle or Like Pac mentioned, someone like Whitmore, I think would be worth taking a look at something off the pace. But I think at least for me, I'm gonna try and fade Matola here slightly. Not a complete fade like I try to do, but probably just use a little bit less of Matoli and be more heavier on Imperial Hint and Chancelot here.
Yeah, I was gonna say one thing we never covered here or haven't covered yet is the fact that Shenslot does get a jockey change, which I think is pretty massive here. I think the last two races, a couple of us have been sort of chatting like, why is the jock still who's who's been riding him all along still on him? Seemed like an odd situation that after a couple of funky trips where you could make an argument that the jock maybe didn't read the track bias. And at Jerkins, the rail was kind of dead. Had chance, way down in on a sort of dead rail. And if you watch the Santa Anita sprint, that just was sort of a wonky race with how where the jock picked his line had the horse. Jose Ortiz picks that mount up. I think he's one of the better jocks on the front end in the country, and I really, really like the move to Jose there. I think it makes makes a lot of sense, and I'm kind of amazed that Caleb hasn't mentioned his boy Engage yet here.
Yeah, I liked Engage last Keeneland when he was out. This ain't it. This is not his spot. He'll run his race, and I do think he'll run probably a better race than he ran last. But I think he would need a lot of things to go right for him to have a shot in this field. I think the scratch of Landeskog, dramatically changes the landscape of this whole race, just given that Chancelot now has a realistic chance to, I don't want to say get loose. The horse is so quick that he could be out there by himself, even if the fractions are fast. And I think that when this horse doesn't get pressure, he can be tough to reel in. So I think it's going to be tough on some of the closers. If I had to pick a closer, the one that I'm probably most interested in is going to be Whitmore. I'm going to actually turn on my screen share, and I hope this works. All right. Going to give Thorograph Magic 101. This doesn't even really have anything to do with Thorographs. But the thing with Whitmore is if you're looking here, basically anytime you see negative, it means it's a better race. Higher numbers like 19 are very bad races. If you look at his form, he comes in, it only goes back, but he has a long layoff as a 3-year-old. He runs an okay race. He runs a 4. Second off the layoff, he runs a huge top as a -2, minus 2.25. Really good number. Has another layoff, in his 4th, and then runs another improved fig second off the layoff. Has a layoff again at the end of that season, runs a 0, comes back, runs a -1.5 second off the layoff. Gets a shorter, 7-week layoff here, runs a respectable -1.5, and then actually improves on that to a -2. Lays off again, gets a 0, comes back with a -2 second off the layoff. This horse improves second off the layoff every time. The question is an improvement in that -2 ballpark good enough to win this race? And I'm not sure. Matoli, Chancelot, Imperial Hint are all capable of running better figures. But that is something that I think you have to consider, especially given the fact that Whitmore had a pretty poor break in his last start. So if I was going to use any closer, Whitmore's the one I'm going to look at. This is actually an excellent race if you want to look at sheets patterns. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but there's a number of horses here who've shown patterns of improving second off the layoff. There's a whole couple of horses here, Frenzy Fire being a prominent example, that always have just massive bounces off of career tops. I think that he's going to bounce hard in this race because that last effort was good. So yeah, I think that my top 3 are going to be the maybe a little bit of Whitmore sprinkled in is probably a C.
All right, well, that about covers what we wanted to get through, and I feel like we actually did it in a timely fashion, which I'm actually surprised. Even though our boy Steve Fox over here likes to bitch that we spent too much time on our William Mare turf race. that is actually a really good race for second. All right, I know you want to bitch that Sister Charlie's going to win it, but it's a real good tight race for second. All right, it's interesting in that way. But yeah, I think tomorrow I have a couple of other contributors who are going to be sending me some stuff. I don't know, Caleb, if you were gonna. I know, Mark, you're doing some nonsense. I think with a pumpkin or something. I don't know what you're doing, some hayride or something. But we're gonna try and get something on here. Get something on here for tomorrow with some of the contributors, and maybe take a little bit closer look at maybe a ticket or two that we're gonna put together for Friday. So, Clam says he's gonna send stuff. I don't even want to know what that is.
He's gonna mush all Mark's picks.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'll send you some stuff. It's gonna be all. It's gonna be like just a bunch of like broken tickets and stuff that he mushed of Mark's. Jesus. Anyways, well, thank you guys for tuning in. I know we covered a lot there in a short period of time, but yeah, we got 4 races. We're gonna go over Friday. We'll be back tomorrow, and like I said, if you got any questions, toss them in the chat, or just go ahead and hit us up on Twitter. See you guys.